The summer of experiments with traffic on the South Fork continues in Southampton Town. I'm Joe Shaw. This is 27 Speaks Behind the Headlines. This is our chance to sit down with the reporters from the Express News Group and cover what's in the papers this week. That's the Southampton Press, the East Hampton Press, and the Sag Harbor Express, and also at 27east.com. With me this week are staff writers Cailin Riley, Michael Wright, Jack Motz, and features editor Michelle Trauring. We're going to start with Michael. So let's talk traffic, Mike. County Road 39, we have seen some experimentation with changes in the way that the lanes are structured and things. Charlie McArdle was before the Southampton Town Board this past week and talked about what's going on up there. He says things are actually looking pretty good and working, right?
Yeah, well, so the working thing we keep saying that. We actually put it in our headline yesterday, and I almost suggested that we change it. That, not working, helping is what he
Okay.
says. The idea being that they made these changes to the traffic patterns in the vicinity of North Sea Road on County Road 39, between North Sea Road roughly and McGee Street is where the work has happened. They restriped some lanes based on an experiment that they did in May of 2025, where they blinked the three stoplights between North Sea Road and Shinnecock Hills. So Sandy Hollow Road, McGee Street, and Tuckahoe Road. And the thinking being on McArdle's part, this is all Charlie McArdle's idea, that the stoplights are causing these chronic everyday traffic jams where people just crawl for miles and miles and miles and sit stopped for minutes at a time. That when they did that, it did sort of work. Between North Sea Road and, say, the Lobster Inn, traffic flowed very well when they were doing that. It was just for 2 weeks. They tinkered a little bit, and the days that they got it worked out and that there weren't other, speed bumps thrown in their way, like car accidents or road work or something like that, which did happen, the cars moved the whole way. And so they said, see, that does make a difference. The problem was that it was incredibly labor intensive. They had to have a police officer at every one of the stoplights that they were turning off, just like that's part of highway law, that's required.
Right.
And they had to have highway department people all over the place using cones. They narrowed County Road 39 to one lane just to the west of North Sea Road. And so what they tried to do is they tried to come up with a longer term, less labor intensive version. And so they got Suffolk County to actually paint the roadway and restripe the roadway on Sandy Hollow and County Road 39 to narrow them down to one lane, so forcing a merge just to the west of North Sea Road and on Sandy Hollow Road. And then just hope that the stoplights could be allowed to return to their normal cycle, save for Sandy Hollow Road stoplight, which is now just green for all westbound traffic at all times between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. And Charlie McArdle says that there's data that shows that it's working, and he says that that he's talking about the speeds of cars that they're tracking somehow, and that you're going like 20 miles an hour. But a lot of people that are on the road see that stretch from North Sea Road to Sandy Hollow Road just bumper to bumper crawling, which they blame on this forced merge from 2 lanes down to 1 lane. And I drive by there all the time, and it is a parking lot a lot of the time.
This is one of those cases where it's difficult to know what success is going to look like, right? Because the amount of traffic is always going to be bumper to bumper. There's no way to really stop that.
Exactly. It was that way before they did this too. It was just 2 lanes of bumper to bumper all the way to Sandy Hollow, because then you had the Sandy Hollow Road light cycling, right? So County Road 39 sure was 2 lanes all the way to Sandy Hollow Road, but every 4 minutes or so, the stoplight would change for like a whole minute and stop traffic. And we all know that domino effect. That's the whole point of this stuff. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. And the other thing is that everybody's saying, oh well, it's so much worse. It's so much worse this summer. Well, I mean, it's been worse every summer for years, and so it's hard to say what is worse and what isn't, unless you could flip it on and off like a switch. If you could do 2 lanes one day and 1 lane the next day and then see which one flows better over time. But you can't really do that, right? So they need to look at data. And McCardle did not, when he came to the town board last week, said he did not have the data. He says he didn't know that they were going to be talking about that. Councilman Tom Neely, who was the town's transportation director for over 20 years and worked on all this County Road 39 stuff for decades, with the county, with the town, when they were doing the cops and cones, when they widened the road and all that. He says that he's been looking at other metrics and he's not so sure that it's helping, but that it maybe isn't making it worse, at least. And it does seem to be helping for cars coming from the north. So cars coming down Noyak Road and then North Sea Road and then onto Sandy Hollow and onto the highway, which, has long been a bypass, especially for people that are coming from like East Hampton, Sag Harbor. They go up through Sag Harbor, come down Noyak Road, onto North Sea Road, and then often branch out onto all the little back roads, Sabonic Inlet Road and Golf Club Drive, and come through Shinnecock Hills. And, one of the things that McCardle says is that they've been looking at that, and those backups on Sabonic Road in particular and some of those other roads really have diminished substantially because of this, just because everybody's being guided by their GPS. And when they get in their car in Northwest Woods and say, what's the quickest way for me to get back to Santa Mauritius? It takes them whatever the quickest way is. And, if the GPS tells them to just stay on Sandy Hollow Road and get on County Road 39, because after Sandy Hollow Road, it moves pretty well, then they're doing that. And so you're not seeing as many people on those back roads. So, these are the metrics that Charlie is saying are the benefits that make it worth continuing this program. The town agreed that they need to talk about it more because they just okayed $136,000 in overtime for highway department staff who are still working around this roadway. They're blocking off 2 roads every evening where the town board passed laws banning turns onto County Road 39 because they slow down traffic. But police can't really enforce that just all the time. And so the highway department has just been blocking those roads off in the afternoons. Much to the chagrin of many of the people that use them as shortcuts. They're also, that $136,000 is not just County Road 39. They also do the Canoe Place Road stoplight bypass every morning, which people just absolutely love, and clearly makes a big impact on how traffic flows on Montauk Highway in the mornings. So there's expenses that they're going to talk about more.
This year, and actually last year and this year, there have been a lot of ideas thrown at the wall to see what sticks, and Charlie McCardle's trying some different things. So this is definitely continues to be a work in progress. We'll have to see what ends up working, as you said, to improve things. It's not going to fix anything, but maybe it'll help make things a little bit better.
Yeah, Suffolk County is supposed to release a big study this fall about County Road 39 that is actually going to suggest a fix for it all.
That'll be interesting to see. I will be curious to see what their idea is. Yes, exactly. We'll see what that is. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Let me bring in Jack Motz, who is our East Hampton reporter. Hey, Jack.
Hello, Joe.
So we're going to take a break from talking about the building department this week in East Hampton.
Yeah, I know. First time in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that.
We're going to talk instead about a family that's got, or a person who's got their best friend with them at housing in the town because of a settlement that was reached. Talk about what this is about.
So basically, the Housing Authority in a settlement this week, they've agreed to establish reasonable accommodation policies for support animals. So pretty much what happened was the Justice Department filed a lawsuit in May 2024 on behalf of a woman named Carrie Maroney, who was living in Accabonac Apartments, which is that 50-unit complex over on Accabonac Road in East Hampton. And basically what she wanted was she wanted to have a support animal named Lucky come and live in the complex with her unidentified son who was having some, health complications, and the dog basically was meant to relieve some of that. So the Justice Department filed suit in May 2024, and it's been litigated since then. And pretty much the outcome is that the housing authority has agreed to pay the family $82,500 in damages. Most of that's going to go to paying for the attorneys and over whatever it was 2-3 years of litigation. And but the big thing is that there's now going to be reasonable accommodation policies in these for housing authority tenants. So yeah, I mean, Lucky's died now. He died earlier this year, so it's not pretty sad.
But this is a
but,
fight that's gonna make a difference for a lot of other folks who have these service animals, right? And
well, yeah, exactly. So that's what Maroney was telling us, is that she was it's advocating for people down the line who want to have a support animal there. There's now going to be options for them. The housing authority is going to be putting up a sign in all of their complexes that says these policies are available. There's an application process that everyone will have to go through. The housing authority, I think, is supposed to respond within 14 days. There's certain stuff that they're allowed to ask for, when determining, whether people can have a support animal. Obviously there's some discretion there. So yeah, I mean, that's basically what the bottom line is that going forward, there's now going to be these policies in housing authority complexes. So people who want a support animal are going to be able to apply for one.
Really interesting over the years, recent years, how support animals, the idea of people being able to bring support animals with them on planes and into businesses and things like that has really gained a lot of strength in the courts, especially. And this was just another example that the town, I think, had this policy in place, and they're going to change the policy now because it's pretty clear that the courts are favorable towards the idea of support animals, that there should be reasonable accommodations for people who require support animals.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. And, when Lucky was with this family, the dog was allowed to live with them eventually in 2022. So the lawsuit was really seeking damages for the time, whatever it was, a couple year period where the dog was back in, I think it was Illinois. So once the dog arrived at the complex, the family said that the boy's health complications were relieved, and they were helped by having the dog there. But yeah, I mean, that's really what it's all about. Is it's going to be it's going to be going down the line. There's going to be these accommodation policies for people who are living in housing authority complexes, and they'll be able to apply for it. So
yeah, really interesting stuff, and it's a battle that's going to have a lot of impact going forward for a lot of other families, most likely.
Yep, no doubt.
Cool stuff. Good story. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
This is 27 Speaks Behind the Headlines. I'm Joe Shaw. I'm a consulting editor at the Express News Group. Let me bring on Cailin Riley, our reporter who covers Sag Harbor, among many other things. Hey, Cailin.
Hi, how's it going?
No, not bad. So Sag Harbor is getting ready now for, I mean, there have been conversations in the past about what Adam Potter is proposing on his properties there, but it's really going to start to be in the spotlight now. What's coming up that's going to bring it into the spotlight?
Sure. So anyone who lives in Sag Harbor or follows Sag Harbor knows the name Adam Potter. I mean, that was pinged on my radar even back when I was covering Southampton Village. So that tells you how big of a name he is. He's a developer, and he's purchased some properties in the area of Bridge Street, which is right in the village. 7 and 11 Bridge Street are the two properties that he, for several years, has been before the land use boards many times because he wants to develop them into a 84,000 square foot 3-story building that would have commercial properties on the ground level, and then several condominiums, some of them which would be affordable and some market rate. And it's a huge project. It would require an almost unprecedented number of variances from the ZBA. But the biggest hurdle at the moment is that there is soil contamination on the property. And at the moment, it doesn't cause a threat to public health. But once you want to develop that property, the standards for residential use are much more stringent. So it's going to require a really, really extensive cleanup plan. They already submitted to the New York State DEC what's called a remedial action work plan. So, a kind of step-by-step plan for how they plan to deal with this uncovered coal tar contamination. It's like a volatile organic substance, and it involves a lot of stuff that you don't have to be a scientist to say, eek, that seems like it's going to be a huge undertaking. We're talking removing soil up to a depth of possibly 15 feet, refilling it with clean soil, dewatering, all kinds of things that are just massively extensive. And, he's deeply invested in this project, so he has to do it.
It's sort of similar to what happened at the neighboring gas ball property when they had
which he also owns. Yes.
Yeah. So it was related to that. So what's the nature of the contamination? It's coal tar contamination. What did that come from? Where did that contamination come from?
There was a lot of businesses that were there from, even the 1800s, just different industrial uses. And it's kind of hard to say exactly where it came from, but it's there and it needs to be removed. So right now, the public has an important kind of role. I mean, most people in Sag Harbor who are involved are pretty activated about this issue one way or another. I mean, it's a huge, huge project. There are definitely people that are in opposition to it, but it's something that people need to pay attention to if you live in Sag Harbor. I mean, I don't live there, but I have family there still. So it's an important issue. And the DEC is currently reviewing this plan that was submitted by Adam Potter's LLC. And people have a chance to go online now. I have a story this week. There's a link. You can go online. You can kind of read this report that the DEC has to refamiliarize yourself with the project. There's a lot of resources available. There's resources at John Germain Library too. And there's a public comment period that opened on July 22nd, and it'll be open through September 5th. There's also a public meeting scheduled. So it's something people should really look into because this plan is very extensive and, it's probably not the most exciting summer reading that you could do. I wouldn't exactly call it a beach read, but it's a necessary read if you live in Sag Harbor and you care about what happens in the downtown.
It's just a reminder that what he has in mind is to build essentially a multi-story property there that would have retail and other commercial uses on the bottom floor and lots of apartments above. And that project has some opposition because of the size of it. But the argument that I think Adam Potter's making is that the village needs more housing. Everybody agrees on that. And This is one way to do it. And some of those units will be affordable housing as well, right?
Yes, they will. And the number of commercial units that he has planned for this is basically the same as the number of the commercial units that are currently there. But they do have to knock down the buildings that are there in order to do this remedial plan to get rid of this contamination. So it's a huge issue in Sag Harbor, and it has been for the last couple of years. So, it's worth checking out. And then sort of a related or unrelated story, depending on your choose your own adventure Sag Harbor buffet of whether things are related or not, is a story about the lot that he owns that has 93 parking spaces in it. Most people call it the gas ball lot because if you grew up in Sag Harbor like me, you remember that big giant turquoise gas ball that National Grid, who owns the property, had there. They have paid parking there, and just this Thursday, a week ago, he closed the lot because he said that the village, which leases the lot from him for about $52,000 a year, was not doing the proper required maintenance on the lot. because there's these giant concrete forms with rebar sticking out of them that have been there for a while. But he said, I spoke with his lawyer, Alex Kriegman, and he said that they contacted the village multiple times and told them they needed to remove that because it was a danger. There's no lights in the parking lot. And I guess because they didn't do it, he closed the lot. So there's a lot of spicy interaction going on in the comments on Facebook about, did he close this lot because he's mad at the village, or who knows? He says he didn't. So that's another story that's sort of related to this. That's kind of playing out still. That
it is tangential as this project is going to go for this conversation about the cleanup, and then it'll go before the regulatory boards. There's going to be lots of opportunity to comment about it. You'll be there, Cailin. Thank you.
See, local news is exciting, guys.
There is always something to talk about in Sag Harbor, no question. Appreciate it. So let's go to our silver lining story of the week. And as usual, we bring in Michelle Trauring, our features editor for that. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Joe. This is turning into a regular thing, isn't it?
Because you write the happy stories. You write the fun stories. They're the stories that are always bringing some positives to the news this week. You wrote this week about, I'm going to mispronounce it, L'Arche. How do you pronounce that?
You nailed it. I often mispronounce it as well, but it is L'Arche, Long Island.
Okay, and L'Arche, Long Island celebrated an anniversary of sorts this week, but talk about what they do. It was really kind of an important service they're providing to the community.
It is. It's a pretty amazing organization. And despite them being around for 10 years, they've really flown under the radar. And that is what they are definitely trying to change. So the organization L'Arche itself, it means the Ark in French. It was actually founded in 1964. But in those years since, they've spread all over the world. They have over 100 communities in 60 different countries. And on Long Island, that means 2 homes, one in Baiting Hollow and one in Riverhead, that are created to have this shared independent living situation among folks who have intellectual disabilities. So here, that means folks who are on the spectrum and also some folks who are have Down syndrome, and they live completely independent lives in these communities, which is something that is much needed among folks in this population here on Long Island. So they
live independent lives, but they live together, right? They're sort of group situations so that they're supporting each other in the meantime, right?
Exactly. So there's 4 folks per home, and they have staff and some live-in assistants, but the idea of living independently really means that they are able to live their lives how they see fit. So they work, they go to the gym, they volunteer, they participate in art programs, and they support each other through their daily lives. They talk about politics and climate change. They recently have been talking a lot about dating. And, they're living lives just like the rest of us, but really, truly, on their own, which is really special.
We know pretty in depth about the need here because one of our assistant editor, Kim Covell Motz, is she has the Flying Point Foundation, which is for autism. And we've talked many times, she and I have spoken about how desperate the need is for housing, for independent living, for men and women on the spectrum who need to have a place where they can live comfortably and safely, but also independently, that this is really crucial. And there isn't a lot of that kind of housing available in the community.
There really isn't. And I think it's the story that we're hearing across the East End told in different ways, right? Where the cost of living is going up and up. In this case, the cost of real estate is going up and up. And so organizations like L'Arche Long Island simply cannot afford to buy, $1 million plus home on their budget. So as part of the effort to fundraise, they are hosting a summer gala on Thursday, August 6th at the Parish Art Museum in Watermill, and they're hoping to raise some of these critical funds to hopefully in the next 2 years open another home on Long Island, one that is desperately needed. So go check out a party for a good cause.
Always a good idea to go to the party for a good cause. But I suspect that, that they would love to expand, but it's the same stresses that everybody else faces. The cost of trying to find properties is got to be prohibitive. And I know that there are some other organizations locally that are trying to address this as well. I know that the Dormition of the Virgin Mary Greek Orthodox Church has been involved in trying to find some housing. It's such an important issue. It really is. So it's great that L'Arche has been able to for 10 years, at least try to make a dent in this, but they'd really love to expand their presence, I think.
Absolutely. And, not only make a dent, but they've really changed the lives of their residents over the last 10 years. And, in the next 10 years, the executive director, Kathleen Cailin, she said that she hopes that the 8 core members have another 8 core members, to join them and maybe more. So that is the hope.
That's great stuff. So it's an important gala coming up, as there's so many good fundraising efforts this summer, and that's definitely one of them. Thank you to Michael Wright, Cailin Riley, Jack Motz, and Michelle Trauring for being here with me today. I'm Joe Shaw. We'll be back next week with another edition of 27 Speaks Behind the Headlines.